All right, hi, Paul Sackis, Good News Broadcast for Caregivers. It's a serious conversation we're going to have here. It's serious, and however, we have two people on the line here: a doctor who knows a lot about it, and a keeper, I'm going to call you, who knows a lot about that. This is for caregivers. My daughter's my carekeeper. For caregivers are relatives who watch the progression of a disease called Fronto-Temporal dementia, or FTD, and a family member can feel like a stranger has moved into the household. So that's not a good news. Hopefully, it's a nice stranger, but it's a stranger, and it's a sad scenario, no doubt about it. I'm living through it. I don't think it's FTD. I don't know. Maybe I'll learn with my aunt, who's 94, who can sing. We go to her the home, and we can sing My Fair Lady, and we can sing, but she can barely talk. And these are, concerning scenarios. In any case, I don't know what that is. I don't know. Maybe you'll help us here. Actually, we have Deb, who's a carekeeper. She's on the line here. Hi, Deb. Good morning. How are you?
Just wonderful. Thank you for having us today.
Oh, look at that energy. You could be my carekeeper. All right. And then Dr. Tiffany Chow. Good morning, Dr. Chow. How are you?
Good morning, and thank you so much for letting us share our information with you.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to learning about this. Vice President Clinical Development at Alec Tour and a neurologist expert in dementia, best-selling author, and I did the Brain series back in the 80s. So I know just a little bit about these kinds of things for PBS. And actually, Canada, your book is a bestseller up there, was one of our partners, TV Quebec. So what is the FTD?
So, Paul,
let's start with that.
Paul,
What is FTD?
Okay, so FTD, or frontotemporal dementia, is one cause of dementia. Alzheimer's disease is the much more common one about which many people have heard. By comparison, FTD is relatively rare. 60,000 people in the United States probably affected versus millions with Alzheimer's disease. Another important difference, which leads to the name frontotemporal dementia, is that the front half of the brain is affected more in FTD, much more, than in Alzheimer's disease, where memory loss is the main symptom. In FTD, because your personality, the way you act around other people, your behavior, your judgment on social things or financial things or problem solving, that's all handled by frontal lobes. Those become the symptoms of frontotemporal dementia. Therefore, people may believe that a young person in their 50s with FTD, which is the usual age of onset, is going through a midlife crisis, or may have some degree of depression because they're giving up things or withdrawing from their usual hobbies or habits. So it's very difficult for families to receive an accurate diagnosis early in FTD, and that delay can be very long, like years. And I think that's part of Deb's story.
Deb, your experience with a loved one with FTD. Well, how did that come about?
Yes.
Is that your profession, or is this a family member?
It's a family member. My husband, at the young age of 38, started changing. We owned and operated a business in Iowa, and he started changing. We noticed a decline of all of his hobbies. He was a very avid demolition derby man. All of a sudden, he started changing and not wanting to compete in any of his hobbies. And he also then just started changing and not wanting to go to work, and his work ethic changed, his behaviors changed, he became paranoid, and we decided to close the business due to this. Along with that, we started to going to physicians, and the physicians would try different meds for him, saying that he was depressed or had other issues of midlife and all those types of things. Slowly, we started seeing more personal changes and more paranoia. Can you imagine marrying somebody in 1991 and then in 2012 looking into the same person's eyes but a different personality, someone that cannot even function anymore and be able to keep a job? And it was just devastating to our families. Finally, by 2015, at the young age of 44, we were diagnosed with FTD. At this point in our lives, our daughter was a senior in high school. I still had to continue working full time, but we no longer could keep him at home because of his behaviors, along with his paranoia, and also couldn't trust him not to get in a car and drive. This man loved to drive cars, but we couldn't keep him away from the cars, and it was not safe no longer for him nor I for him to stay with us. So at that point, we had to put him into a nursing home. It is so devastating for our family. It's devastating for our friends, and it just is a very heart-wrenching story for anybody living through this disease.
Wowie, zowie, but I see you're a good wife. I'm a minister, and also, but you're tried and true. So that's beautiful. Let me ask a question here. So you mentioned it's difficult to diagnose FTD. Are there? I see a word genetic testing. What does that mean, Dr. Chow?
So once a physician has come to the accurate diagnosis of frontotemporal dementia, we know that a higher proportion of these patients have genetic mutations causing the disease than in Alzheimer's disease. So you don't necessarily hear about people with Alzheimer's disease having full genetic testing to inform their families whether children have inherited the gene. But a person living with FTD has a 50-50 chance of passing it on to a child, and up to 40% of persons living with FTD actually have this due to a genetic mutation. Therefore, it's really important for physicians to make sure that genetic counseling can be provided so that the family can make their own decision about whether genetic testing is right for them. As you can imagine, it has a lot of potential consequences, and Deb's family did have that conversation.
Okay, so I don't really know what that would actually entail, a genetic test. What is that actually mean?
Good question. So when someone is diagnosed with FTD, we know that there are 3 types of genes that can carry mutations. A mutation is where the code, the sewing together of the genetic code has been flipped or has been clipped in a certain place, and each of those different types of changes is called a mutation. Some mutations will actually manifest as a change in the brain's plans for how it ages or how it degenerates over time and where. So a genetic mutation can be the reasons that a person has FTD. There are 3 very common genetic mutations called C9 open reading frame 72, it's a long name, or MAPT, or granulin. And if someone comes to a genetics clinic with FTD, those are the main genetic mutations that they will look for. Usually from a blood sample, but it can be done from a sputum or spit sample as well.
That doesn't sound too painful, though.
No.
To though look into it. Let me ask you a question. This is through the kindness and the research and development of a company that you work for, Elector. Is that right? This interview. Are there things out there that people might be able to consider using during this time? Are there medicines?
There are multiple clinical trials going on for therapies in FTD, but it's important to point out that currently the FDA has not yet approved any treatment specifically efficacious or useful for FTD.
Okay. And people could sign, I mean, we're a broadcaster, so, maybe somebody could sign up for those trials?
Yes. I would encourage people who are interested to go to website learnftd.com. Again, that's learnftd.com, where they can learn more about what we've been speaking about with you this morning.
Can I ask you one other last question? Deb, I'm crazy about you. You're really a solid citizen. I can see that. Iowa, she's like so happy. And that's great. But let me ask you, just because I mentioned my aunt, who I love dearly, and saying that, you know, she could speak a little bit better about a year or so ago. Now she's 94, and she can't speak, but she can sing. I don't know. We're singers. We're all like in entertainment, and so, but she can sing loud. Is this something as a very acclaimed scientist here? I will call you at this, Dr. Chow. Is any thought in regard to what I'm speaking about?
Well, I have to say that there is very interesting work done about how patients with any diagnosis can access singing even if they can't access speech. And this becomes a very important communication bridge, which it sounds like you are enjoying. And so I'm glad she has that. I don't have enough information to give you more clues about exact diagnosis.
Sure.
Definitely not easy to do online through a third party.
No, I understand. Thank you very much, both of you. Is there a website one more time that that we should be sharing with the audience?
That website is learnftd.com.
All righty, great. Well, thank you both very much for sharing the important work that you're doing. All the best to you, to your husband and your family, and continue doing your science work, because you're coming up with solutions that the world needs. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Paul.
you.
Bye-bye.